Good morning, everybody. I'm Claire Whitehouse. I'm Senior Nurse for Nursing Midwifery and AHP or NMAP Research and Clinical Director for Research and Development at the James Paget Hospital. And I'm also Professor of Healthcare Research and Innovation with University of Staffordshire. Beth Ann has asked me to speak with you today, and I'm so sorry that I can't be there in person. About the importance of research in healthcare, how you may be able to get involved, what sort of opportunities there are available for you. So if you just bear with me 1 second, I will just share my screen and I will walk you through. So I've been asked to speak to you a little bit about my own career pathway. I'd like to give a little bit of background around the landscape of research and development. I'm aware that some of you in the audience will have no research knowledge experience at all, and others of you may be involved in research activity already. So the aim of this is to give a little bit of background context and just to demonstrate at any point of your career how you might get involved and support your patients. So a whistle-stop tour of my career background. So I trained as a registered nurse in Coventry University. I'm from Somerset originally, just near Glastonbury. If any of you are festival goers, we used to listen to it from our back garden. I grew up on a farm. So I moved to Coventry and did my nurse training 2002, 2005. And then following my training, moved back down to Somerset in Taunton, Musgrave Park Hospital, and started working straight away in intensive care. Whilst I was there, I undertook a teaching and assessing course, which was essentially a mentorship course with Bournemouth University as well. And that's me and my friend Marielle, who was in intensive care at the time. I look really young there. And then in about 2007, I decided to move to London. In all honesty, I dumped my ex and decided I wanted to go and do something different. So I moved to London and started working in intensive care there at UCLH. And when I applied for the intensive care course, the intensive care role, staff nurse role, it also came with a intensive care specialist degree. So when I interviewed for the job, I was also interviewed by London South Bank University lecturers at the same time. And when I was awarded the post, I was also awarded the course, which was brilliant. And that's Ibrahim, who was our course tutor at the time. From there, I spent about a couple of years working there, and that was kind of my first sort of awareness that research actually happens in the NHS and with patients. So there was quite a lot of research that was going on at UCLH at the time. And I used to have these sort of people come over and ask for sort of blood samples at certain times and things like that. And I used to ask a little bit about what research was happening. So after a couple of years, I have a rare disease. So I have what's called hypermobility Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And it basically meant that I really couldn't be doing the heavy lifting so much because my joints kept dislocating. But I loved intensive care, and I'd kind of got this interest in education and research. Didn't really understand what research was all about, but a post came up at Imperial College Healthcare for a 1-year fixed term post as a critical care research sister. Based at St Mary's, which is in Paddington, and joined with 2 other sites in Hammersmith and Charing Cross. So Hammersmith was sort of renal and cardiac, and Imperial was mostly neuro. Still in intensive care, and then Paddington at the time was mostly respiratory. Whilst I was there, it turned into one of the 4 major trauma centres in London. So it was literally at the time where those 4 trauma centres were being established, and it was really exciting. And my role was a clinical research nurse when I was there. So I was delivering research on behalf of others, and I became quite interested in it's in my nature to ask why. I probably was quite frustrating as a child. I was that child going, why? But what it meant was I felt that I needed to understand a bit more about research methodologies. So I found a postgraduate certificate course in research methodologies at King's, which was just around the corner. And that was in central London. And I knew that I didn't have the funds to self-fund, so I literally Googled one day scholarships for nurses or something along those lines, and came across the Florence Nightingale Foundation. And I received my first scholarship for research methods to fund that course, which was brilliant. And that was when I first began thinking about, well, if I really want to understand research methods, maybe I should take the opportunity to design some research myself. So that was my first foray into research design. And I basically designed a study on burnout in critical care nursing staff across the 3 sites, with the change of becoming a major trauma centre being the intervention for one of the sites. And I did a burnout scale prior to the implementation of the major trauma centre, and then a year later, and reviewed that. And if you're interested, actually what that showed was that people that were working at the other sites where there had been no change were actually at higher risk of burnout than those where lots and lots of change was happening. And that was that really came down to people feeling enthused and excited and having training opportunities and things. So that was quite an interesting outcome. And then I really began to realise that people just like me didn't understand the role of clinical research nurses, or anyone particularly that was working in research. I thought a clinical research nurse was someone that wrote their own research and did their own studies, but actually I realised that mostly that role is about delivering the day-to-day management and leading the day-to-day management of studies from elsewhere. So that was really interesting. So I did that, continued working with the Florence Nightingale Foundation, and the photo there was from Westminster Abbey. And I was asked to, every year they do a memorial service for Florence Nightingale. And I was asked from the foundation to carry the lamp. So that's me there at the front. And at this point, well, my again, this might be oversharing, but my best friend Russ and I realised that actually we were all in love and all the rest of it, and everyone went, well done, thank goodness. And he moved to London as well, and we had a couple of years there. And at this point, we were thinking we probably wanted to leave London, so we'd been there about 4 or 5 years at the time. And I wanted to move on to doing a master's, and I could APEL my units from the postgrad certificate at King's. And I took that through to Oxford Brookes Uni, who at that time, this was pre-COVID by a good few years. So I'm thinking actually 2013, that would have 2012, 2013, that would have been. So most unis at the time weren't doing the distance learning opportunities that they certainly do now. So I think there was about 2 or 3 in the country that were doing masters at that point. It was distance learning, but we knew that we wanted to leave London, so I wanted a distance learning option so that I could take it with me. So I applied for another Florence Nightingale scholarship, and that funded a course, Masters in Clinical Leadership with Oxford Brookes. And then we decided we wanted to move up to Norwich, so which is where Russ is from, but we wanted to move up in this direction. So again, I applied for a senior clinical research nurse post at the James Paget, which just happened to be up at the same time that we were job hunting. And since then, there's been a number of things that I've sort of worked in. I've gone for a few grants with the National Institute for Health Research, which have funded some travel scholarships as well, and something called the 70 at 70 or Senior Research Leaders Programme, which funded 15 hours a week for 3 years to build capacity and capability of staff to become kind of research ready. And although that funding was really for nursing and midwifery because it came from the Nursing and Midwifery Office, I actually included AHPs and Ps because I'm very aware that audiologists are not one of the 14 professions that are included in the AHP list, which always surprises me because I always think that you are. So in my head, I always think, oh, there's this opportunity, but actually it's not. So anyway, food for thought on that coming up. And now I am working as clinical director for research and development at the James Paget. I'm also I have a regional role with the National Institute for Health Research Delivery Network, East of England, ridiculously long name, as a hospital settings lead. So it's only 4 hours a week, but that role is about supporting all of the hospitals and NHS trusts to try and align some of the work that we're doing to make it easier to run research within the organisations. And then I'm undertaking my PhD part-time and working full-time as well at the moment. And I'm looking at value, power and social positioning of NMAP-led research, nursing midwifery HP-led research in the NHS in England. So lots going on. If you'd have asked me way back at number one there, if I was going to end up with a long career in research or have it so influenced by research, I really would have laughed. The same as if someone had asked if I was going to be doing a PhD. So it just was never in my my sort of way of thinking, really. But what I've learned is that because I've really enjoyed education, both learning and teaching, what I've really learned is that those pathways of the different types of degrees are actually research training, and they all lead towards it. So when you're actually doing your PhD, it's on a focus topic that you really want to focus on. But equally, I'm also really, really supportive of people that don't want to follow that academic path, because there's so many opportunities out in various organisations, whether you're primary, secondary care, tertiary, charities, wherever you may be based, industry, life sciences. There are opportunities to progress in different ways and actually leading, and it's all about being the best that you can be at the place that you're at, is my view. So a bit of background then, moving on in terms of the overview of R&D, or research and development. So this is us. I think hopefully all we know where we are in the east of England, but our actual region for the NIHR is one of the biggest in the country. We have 6 integrated care systems within our region, and we have all of these trusts that are just down the left-hand side there that form part of that. And although these are listed, this doesn't exclude all of the additional community care groups and the charities, etc. as well. But those that sit specifically within the NIHR, National Institute for Healthcare Research, are listed on here just for your awareness, really. So what do the NIHR do? They are funders. They provide grants that people can apply for, whether that's to do with disease-specific areas or research themes. There's lots of different, I think it's something in the region of 24 different funding streams. They provide workforce allocation. So across the country, there are something like 15,000 nurses, midwives, AHPs and practitioners, of which audiology would be included, although the numbers actually aren't known. And in fact, they weren't even known in the kind of more so-called well-known groups such as nursing until a few years ago, when a few of us, as part of one of our grants, led a review to try and find out actually how many of us are there, how big is this workforce. And actually in nursing, it was at least 7,500, so massive. And that's anyone that's working in research or linked to it in any way. So lots going on. The NIHR also measure performance, set benchmarks or high-level objectives that we have to align to, and they also lead the participant research experience survey, because patient and public voice is hugely important in research. So how do we know what the right research to do is if we don't know what matters to our population? They are also get involved in horizon scanning. So all of us know what our patient populations are within and around our organisations, but actually from a higher level, we don't necessarily understand what that looks like. Or there might be, it's not a blanket case of all the themes and research priorities are the same across the whole country, because we've got different areas of deprivation and need and affluency, etc. So what we can do is we can speak to our regional teams at the NIHR and we can say, look, we have a really high population of this group, and say, for example, if you're working in audiology, it may be that you see a huge particular demographic of patients and you think, well, we see so many of these every day or every week. I wonder if there's any research that we might be able to lead here or get involved in here that our patients would have access to. And you can have that conversation with the NIHR. And they will keep an eye out to see if there's anything that's already out there or that might be kind of upcoming, hence the horizon scanning. They also have an amazing workforce development option or functionality that's led by Esther Thomas, and that's open to absolutely everybody's patient, public, staff. There's lots of opportunities there, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. in case any of you are interested in taking on any of those. And then they also have some level of responsibility for supporting partnerships and link work. So if there's anything that's happening, for example, at the James Paget that we think, well, actually, that could that work at the NNN or the QE or Ipswich or elsewhere across the country, or with community partners or charities, then they will help create some links for that to happen as well. Excuse me. So the next part I thought I would just talk you through, and for those of you in the audience who are quite well research aware, this hopefully will be serve as a bit of a reminder. But for those of you that are new, it's a case of actually trying to describe what is research and what is development. And I think sometimes people just don't know. We've been doing a lot of work with our board recently, and also as part of the New Hospital Group, we're having some conversations around helping people to understand what these two words actually mean in a practical sense. So when I talk about research, I'm going to be talking about research delivery. So what's that? And that's research that's designed by others, but hosted by us. And I'm using JPH because that's where I'm based, but actually it's by us could be. So if you think about this in your context, wherever you are based, it's research designed by others that you host as an organisation and you offer to your patients and your staff or carers. It can come from commercial companies and life sciences, pharmaceutical companies, academia, higher education institutions, charities. It could come from other NHS trusts, it could come from your own. So lots of different ways to get involved there. And then moving on to the other side, we've got development, so research development, and I usually add in a /design because I think there's two slightly different things. But what this means is this is research that's designed by us, designed by you. So delivery is about delivering research designed by others. Development design is more about that's being designed by us. So that could be around leadership for grants, going for grant applications and funding applications, to be able to run some research studies, writing protocols, etc. We do a lot of work we as a research collective. I'm not talking about we at the Paget. If you build those partnerships and links that I mentioned before, then actually working together as co-applicants with academia, NHS trusts, charitable trusts, whoever, and patients, because they are also research partners, can actually really strengthen your grant applications. This also includes training as well and workforce development. So I'll speak a little bit more about that in a moment. And then career pathways, because career pathways in research have traditionally, people have sort of fallen into it. They've not necessarily had anything that's been really clearly open or opportunities for them to follow as pathways. And as you can see from mine that I gave to you at the start of this, potentially could have sounded all very simple and straightforward, but actually it's just that, it's kind of been how things have fallen. There wasn't really anything that was made and designed to do that, although there are some opportunities now, far more than there were before. And actually for you as audiologists, that's still going to be quite challenging because you don't actually reside within those 14 AHP professions. It doesn't mean there's nothing available for you, but it does create, I think, another challenge. So in terms of my role as senior nurse for NMAP research and my role as clinical director, I feel really strongly that career pathways are really important, because if people don't know where to go or don't know what the pathways look like, how are they going to get involved in research? And potentially, why would they want to? Because it could seem so big and daunting that actually it puts people off before they even start. So lots and lots of work going on with career pathways. And just then leading on to, this is why is this? Why is research delivery and research development design important? And I have my own personal views, and you may have your own personal views one way or another, but there is actually some researched evidence out there as well. So in light of being research, I will share this with you. So a team led by Osdemvir back in 2015 and repeated again in 2018, and it's another study happening now, has actually demonstrated that patients in research active organisations have better outcomes with their health and care, whether or not they're participating in a research study, which is quite incredible. And some of the background to that research actually demonstrates that the research activity itself, because it has to be follow certain protocols and certain standards, raises the standard of the whole organisation. So why are we all doing this work, and why do we want to support, why do we want to care for our patients? Because we care. And we want to do the best for them. So if we know that research activity brings higher levels of outcome or better outcomes, why wouldn't we want to do that as practitioners? But it's not just about the patients. And I know that that might sound conflicting in some ways or challenging to others, but it's about staff too. So again, I'm a big believer that if you don't support your staff, they can't support the patients well. And there's a team led by Annette Boaz, who's down in Guy's. And actually a lot of the work that they've been doing has really demonstrated so she, outside of the publication, she calls it the increased mojo of people. So people feel better, increased morale, increased satisfaction, and increased recruitment and retention from an organisational perspective when staff are involved in any kind of research or improvement activities. So it gives that added extra. So rather than doing the same thing each day, it's actually, okay, so you're working in those areas. How can you improve things for your patients and for your team, for their process, for their therapies, for their pathways of care, and that seems to, it really helps people to feel sort of boosted. Doesn't mean it's all rose tinted and the sun's a lemon and everything else, because actually it's still really hard in the complex clinical context that we are constantly working in at the moment. It's really hard, but despite that, these are the things that actually retain staff, because they actually feel supported and they've got opportunities to do other things that are going to be best for their patients. So focus there on, so I've just circled the research delivery. So I'm just going to focus a little bit more on that, about how you can get involved, and that hopefully this will be useful for you. So there's a whole raft of ways you can get involved in research. So in terms of research delivery, so studies that are being hosted, so that are being delivered in your organisation, it might be that you are purely involved from identifying patients. So, for example, there might be a study that's happening in your organisation which includes an element of audiology. It could be that you are leading audiology-led research, and it might be that within that area you see a patient and you think they've got this condition. We have a study, or there is a study happening in this trust or this organisation which follows that disease area. For example, I need to let the research team know that there's a patient here, and potentially they can then offer that patient the opportunity to take part. If there's already research happening within your area, you could find out who the research team are. You'll all have research and development departments in your organisations that you can link into. So if you're not sure, you can just go and find them, or ask Switch, or hunt them down wherever they may be living. And you can join a study team. There's some training that you need to do around that, but you will be guided through that process. If you're really interested and you think, well, actually, I've got the skills and expertise to get really much more involved in this, you can become a co-investigator with support from an experienced PI. So PI is a principal investigator, which is the person that leads the research at that site, that leads the activity at that site. So you could be supported by them to lead that research. Or you could actually take on the role of the principal investigator for a new or existing study. And on top of that, if you really wanted to, down the line, you can then lead as a chief investigator. So that's the person that's overall responsible for all of the sites from a clinical perspective. To do any of these things, minus the one in yellow, although it's really useful and good practice, plus free, which is always helpful, you can complete your NIHR Good Clinical Practice training, and this is essentially gives you a certificate that says that you are research ready. If you are doing anything from green onwards, you will have to have this to become part of that team. But we do support and recommend that anybody does that. You can do it online, and it takes maybe half a day, but once you've got it, it lasts for 2 years, and then you can do a refresher, which is a few hours every 2 years. And once you've done that, you could send that through to the R&D office within your organisation. You can also ask them for a short version of a CV, because you might be thinking, I wouldn't have a clue what to put on a research CV. There's templates that you can use, and actually, if you haven't had any research experience, once you've got your GCP, you can say research ready. that's how to start. So actually quite simple. And outside of all of that, you can design your own. So that leads me into research development design. So research and development departments I've just briefly mentioned there, and actually they can support generally with all sorts of other things as well. So support advice for grants, funding streams, and that's to everybody and anybody. It doesn't matter what your role is. If you're interested, just come and have a conversation with us. It's worth the chat, and then if we will be able to signpost you to other areas and other collaborative partners, such as some of these. So academic partnerships, there's a research design service, there are patient and public involvement engagement groups, so they will help to advise and support your work. We work with a whole host of different, these are just some examples, different academic organisations in the UK and internationally, because again, it depends what your research is as to how far you might want to extend some of that. We've got Norwich Research Park, we've got Cambridge Research Park within our region as well. We've also got some specific research hubs across the region and nationally as well. So there's lots and lots of opportunity out there. It's just knowing what it is and where it is. R&Ds can also offer study sponsorship, so supporting in terms of how to then guide. If you decide that you want to design and lead your own and you are successful with a grant, then some organisations can host to sponsor that. They'll support the training and guidance options as well. I'll speak a little bit more about that in a minute. And this is in terms of training. There's a website called NIHR Learn. That is where you will find the Good Clinical Practice, or GCP, that I mentioned just now. But what you'll also find is lots of other opportunities as well. And all of this is free. It's all part of the government's research arm, which is the National Institute for Health Research. So lots and lots of funding and support has gone into workforce development. There's an introduction top left there, Introduction to Health and Care Research, and there's a MOOC. If you don't know what a MOOC is, it's Massive Open Online Course, MOOC. And that's available to patients, to public, to staff, literally anyone. And it just gives you that initial lead into what research is and can be. Within the second one, so top right there, research courses and support, there's lots of different courses and schemes that you can join. GCP is the essential one to start with. So like I say, that's the one that gives you essentially it allows you to be research ready. And then there's lots of career information as well. It says for researchers, but it's for anybody. And there's an NIHR Academy. So it's a whole arm of the NIHR in itself, where there's lots of different funded routes where you can apply for certain funding or certain courses, and they will provide salary and backfill. So really competitive, of course, but really well supported by organisations. And there's a link on here, and I'm sure Beth Ann will share these slides too. And then other things, so lots of spoke placements for students. We will all do lots of different shadowing opportunities if anyone wants them as well. And then career pathways, again, there's, you can use that whole process that I showed you before in terms of research delivery. But when you're talking about development, actually, some of that can form part of your own development as well by moving along each time. And you don't have to start on the green, you can start anywhere. It just depends on your background and your experience. So lots of formal training pathways that are available. So the PI Associate Scheme. So again, these will all have links on for you. Green Shoots, which it provides you with, I think it's 0.2 of a whole-time equivalent in funding to lead a new so if you are a first-time principal investigator or co-investigator, you can apply for this and it will buy out some time for you. So it's always really good, because where do we ever get money from these days? And actually, these are some opportunities to bring in and to do some income generation, whilst at the same time developing you, whilst at the same time offering patients research opportunities that they might not otherwise be able to get. There are other things like senior research leader programs, and from my understanding is although that's only just started really in the last couple of years for nurses and midwives, it's open to AHPs. My understanding is that there is some more building, because there is recognition for audiologists and others who are not classed as those AHP groups, well, actually, why should you not be able to have these opportunities as well? So there is some work going on in the background to design other programs. And what these do again is they'll buy out, like we're saying about the 70 at 70 at the start, buy out some time over 3 years for you to be able to build capacity and capability for research. So in terms of the future, so there is a bid in literally at the moment, and I've put hopeful 2025, and I am really hopeful about this. So the National Institute for Health and Care Research launched a tendered bid just before Christmas for the Professional Health and Care Internship Programme. Their plan is that there will be 23 internships available per year. It's a 3-year tender. Each intern will receive £10,000. You will be eligible to apply for this, and that's what I wanted to be really clear about. This is not one of those schemes where they say it's open to everybody and then audiologists aren't included. You will be able to apply for this if we get it. The criteria said that it had to be a host organisation within the NHS, and they had to have at least one academic partner. They wanted collaborative efforts across regions. So we are the East of England. They are aiming to award one host per region, but there's no guarantee. If the bids are not good enough, we don't get it. However, having said that, we have collaborated with all NHS trusts and a number of charities, some community interest collaboratives, and all 6 ICSs across the East of England. So we are, as far as I'm aware, one of the only regions in England that has put in one bid for the region. So we at the Paget will be the host organisation, and our primary academic partners are the UEA and Anglia Ruskin, because we wanted to make sure there was a good spread across the whole of the region. But we've actually got all of the universities in the region supportive and acting as collaborators. Which is great as well. So we are expecting to hear outcomes in about 7 or 8 weeks' time, so the end of April. If we are awarded this, it will start from September. So I will make sure that Beth Ann and Co have any flyers. The intention, if awarded, fingers crossed, the intention is that we will host some webinars around sort of from June time onwards, but really kicking off from September, which is, as far as we're aware, when the funding starts. And we'll host some webinars about more detail about what it is and what it isn't. And then applications will be open October into November. We'll close in November, and the awards of the 23 interns will be made before Christmas, with the internship starting onward into 2026. So much, I'll give you a lot more detail about that if we get the award, and perhaps I will circulate something through your network just to make sure that you all have access to this, because I think it's really important that you do have some opportunities as audiologists. So this is really exciting, and I'm really, really hopeful that, I don't know, do you know, I'm going to say I'm confident. I'd like to say I'm confident that we've made a really good collaborative bid across the region to make this happen. So watch this space, and I will be in touch as soon as possible. Once again, I'm really sorry that I couldn't be with you today. Please do feel free to contact me. My email is claire.whitehouse at jpaget.nhs.uk. I would have been really happy to do all sorts of Q&A and stay, but sick kids have prevented that today. So have a brilliant rest of the day. Thank you very much, and I will be in touch. Thank you. Bye.